All right. So now, with the fifth stanza, it talks about um, the kind of love for God or for another human being that lets you do this for them. And what is it? Right. It is looking at yourself as just a small scrap of wood and allowing yourself to be reduced to nothing but smoke and ashes, if only to let your beloved or the other or God burn brighter. Right? So you're just scrap wood, they are fire. So what are you? So in comparison to them, you are just a small little thing, and you were made to be sacrificed in order to let the flame burn bigger and brighter. Okay, so within the context of faith, this is most definitely acceptable, right? I mean, most Catholics talk a lot about surrendering to God or surrendering to their faith, and it's definitely nothing to protest about, right? Because I mean, really, in comparison to God, in comparison to the universe, you are just a tiny blip. Really, you don't have to be humble about it. It is a truth that is definitely easy to accept. Um, and believing in God is uh, is or any kind of addition to any faith, really, no matter who your God is. Um, any person who never believed before, who believes now, is a most welcome addition, definitely. It's going to add to the flame of God or to make the faith so much richer, right? So that's not a problem, really. Um, However, when we turn this discussion onto the subject of love, it terrifies me a little personally because what does it mean, right? When you see yourself as just a scrap of wood and your beloved as a fire that burns so bright, and you are going to allow yourself to just be the kindling to their fire because their fire burns so much brighter than yours, and you're not even a fire. You're just kindling. And I kind of find myself asking, well, that's not fair, is it? Right? I mean, shouldn't we be equal? Shouldn't we be both little fires that ignite each other? I don't know. So instead of surrender, really, within the context of love, it somehow changes from surrender to sacrifice, right? Because you are choosing to see yourself as wood instead of fire, and saying that it's all right. I will allow myself to be reduced to smoke and ashes, if only to support you, if only to let you become the fire that you are and let you burn brighter because you're so much more important than I am. Yeah, right? It's a little bit terrifying to think of yourself that way because, what would be really the point of building yourself up if in the end you're just going to minimize yourself in order to uh, in order to support someone, right? Right. But anyway, we will resolve this. We'll come back to this when we finish the next stanza, I think, or once we resolve the whole idea between surrender and sacrifice. Yeah, but technically that's what this stanza is. It talks about surrendering yourself to the idea of the other, the beloved, being brighter than you are. All right. And in some other stanza, it also hits upon humility as well. All right. So Now we get to this one, to the sixth stanza. I saw you and became empty, and this emptiness is more beautiful than any kind of existence. So it obliterates existence, everything that I was before you. And yet, when it comes, existence thrives and creates more existence. Right. So, um, in the context of faith, again, it talks about surrender in a much more concrete way, because you talk about the self. And when we say, I surrender my life to God, I surrender myself to God, you're essentially saying that, okay, God, whatever plans I had for myself, whatever plans I made for myself, I'm scrapping that. Um, you take the wheel, you drive, is going to be done. Um, it's kind of it's easy to follow that. It's easy to surrender to that idea because you think, right, between your plans and God's plans, uh, whatever you make, whatever plan you make for yourself, is going to pale in comparison to whatever God had planned for you. Because, I mean, you're human and He's God. So that means whatever plan brilliant than whatever man-made plans you made for yourself. Right? So that, again, that's easy to do, right? Surrendering to the brilliance of God's plan. But again, if we turn this into a discussion of lover and beloved, like what are you saying? You know, whoever I was before I met you, that's fine. I am allowing myself to be completely someone who loves you, and your presence in my life, no matter how much I gave up in order to have you in my life, whatever life I had before you, it it pales in comparison to the kind of life I'm going to have now that you are here in my life. So it sounds, it sounds definitely romantic, really. But um, imagine the kind of, again, or the word, imagine the kind of sacrifice that you're making by saying, all right, I had this life before you. I'm going to exchange that with something else, with the kind of life that would have none of all of those things, but it's going to be replaced by everything else that comes with you in my life. And I'm choosing that because it is better than the one that I had before. So I feel like it's only going to be it's only going to be feasible if your life was absolutely meaningless before you met this one great love of your life, right? And it is so hard to discern when someone is that, because every single person that comes into your life, you think this is it, right? If you're a moron like me, definitely you would think that way. But yeah, it's just so hard to discern. But um so essentially what these two stanzas are saying is to love a human being like you would love God. And if loving God is all about surrender, then it should be the same when it comes to loving another person. So why is it? Why then is it? But for loving another person, it feels a lot like sacrifice because exchanging of something. So we kind of have to go back to the idea of what surrender is and what sacrifice is. What is it? It's surrendering. It means you leave it all up to another entity, right? So you're not, you don't, you're not counting uh, how much you're giving up. You're just surrendering, right? And if you are sacrificing something, you are counting, right? Like when you say, it's unfair. We should be equal. Um, if you, if I love you this much, you're supposed to love me this much as well, or even greater, right? Because see, that's counting. And if you're saying love God, love another person like you love God, it means that we should stop counting, you know? Because that's, I mean, when you say sacrificing, it is counting. You are measuring how much love is given to you and equating it with how much love you're giving. And what Rumi is trying to get at is to love without counting. And that is hard, right? But it's how it should be, right? Because if you can do that for God, why can't you? Why can't you do that for another human being, right? Because when you say surrender, you're not thinking about how much you're giving up, or maybe you are aware of what you're giving up. You just don't care, because um, the idea of the other is so much more better than whatever you're trying to hold on to, right? So yeah, so that's how you kind of reconcile this entire thing. It's to love without counting, without measuring, and that's ideally how one should love another human being. Ideally.